1919 or the Maulana Azad Medical College, and then the P.R. Vishwanathan Award from the University of Delhi for securing the highest marks in MBBS. He did his MD also from Maulana Azad Medical College and was awarded the Mohanlal Nair Award for the best senior resident for Loknayak Hospital. He did his DM Neurology from the erstwhile GB Pant Hospital, which is now the GB Pant Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education and Research, and is now heading the department there, which I believe is a great thing to achieve for anyone. And he was also a Commonwealth Fellow in Stroke Medicine at Edinburgh in UK. So currently, sir is the Director Professor and Head of the Department of Neurology at GB Pant Institute. He is also the President of Indian Academy of Neurology as well as the President of Delhi Neurological Association. So a rare honor heading two great organizations. He is the EC member of Neurological Society of India, and he was the co-convener of the CME of the Neurosciences NSICon 2023. And he is a prolific writer. He has written various articles, around 150 articles to his credit in various national, indexed and international journals. And he has almost 50 chapters in books. He has served as an editor or a co-editor for almost 25 books and 2 journal supplements. Recently, just yesterday, 7 books were launched. He was the co-editor-in-chief, he's the editor-in-chief for all those 7 books which have been launched under the aegis of IN, encompassing various subspecialties of neurology. And the articles he has written has more than 3,000 citations. He is an excellent speaker, has been awarded various orations, more than 10 orations, to name a few: Professor G. Arjun Das Oration, Professor B.C. Bansal Oration, Mrs. Uma Bansal Oration, and Professor Dr. Shamal Das Oration. He is a great organizer. He has organized several well-attended national and international meetings on headache and various other neurological disorders. And he's appearing regularly on various television programs, creating awareness about headache and other neurological disorders on both the national channel, DD National, and other private TV channels, and has been organizing various lectures and public awareness programs to propagate the idea of neurological awareness about neurological disorders and headache disorders. And recently, the Government of India had invited him during the G20 summit to Mizoram to deliver a lecture on healthcare awareness in Mizoram. He's been awarded numerous awards. So if I keep on repeating all those awards, it will take a lot of time and it will cut on to the sir's presentation. So just to name a few, especially, he has been awarded the Indira Gandhi Appreciation Award by the National Medical Forum. And another important award was the Maulana Azad Medical College for the Distinguished Alumnus Award. And he has been awarded by the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi the State Award for Distinguished Services in Medical Profession. Dr. Devashish has been instrumental in bringing the Indian neurology onto the world platform. He was recently invited, invited several times by the Migraine Trust International Society to deliver lectures on migraine, and recently he also went to the American Academy of Neurology conference where he interacted with the president of the American Academy of Neurology, and he has been instrumental in bringing the Indian Neurology Forum to the world level. He has been an eminent researcher as well. He is a PI of 2 ICMR registries on stroke and demyelinating disorders. He has been a PI of several clinical trials for various drugs. Particularly recently, he has been the PI for trials on erenumab and lasmiditan. His own studies on nerve blocks in migraine and cluster headache have been practice-changing, and these were acknowledged by the up-to-date platform as practice-changing updates for both migraine and cluster headache. Currently, there is no doubt that he is the face of headache medicine in India, and his untiring efforts have resulted in recognition of Indian neurology and headache medicine at the international stage. Most of all, he is a revered teacher. He has mentored more than 100 neurologists, including me and many of the people who are sitting here, who have now become faculty and good neurologists in their own right. He is adored by his students for his teaching skills and his analytical mind. But most of all, I feel There is a personal bond that develops with him. He's always available to all his students for any personal problem even. And I would say he's the man who's been instrumental in many people at our institute passing DM neurology with flying colors because of the continuous emotional and personal support that he gives to his students. He has been instrumental in revamping the DM neurology course at GB Pant, and which I would say is running one of the best programs in the country. He started the first comprehensive stroke unit in a government hospital in North India, which is now treating stroke patients regularly and has resulted in a very good outcome for stroke patients. He runs a headache clinic, one of the busiest headache clinic in probably whole world. There are more than 12,000 patients who have been registered with this headache clinic, and all varieties of headache patients come there from different parts of the country and are given an excellent care. Recently, a headache fellowship was started by Sir, and one of the first fellows has now passed out, and I believe many more fellows will join in this fellowship to advance headache medicine in India. Sir has been instrumental in conducting several community programs like health camps for patients with neurological disorders. These have been very well attended and have provided great solace to patients who cannot come right to the hospitals because of the extreme crowd there, and this has really helped many patients. Besides this, Dr. Debashish is a man with many talents. He's not just an academician, he has been a person who has several varied interests. Right from the very beginning, he was the cultural secretary for Maulana Azad Medical College during his third year. I think many of us know that he directed a movie on epilepsy, Two Sisters, which was even given felicitation by the Indian Academy of Neurology. And he has been an active participant in various plays and other cultural events. This is his family, and I believe Madam is here, Dr. Biti Chaudhary. His elder son, Samiran, he's doing post-graduation in medicine, and younger son is pursuing PhD in Germany. So, a very happy family. And I would say one more thing here. Dr. Debashish has a flair for organizing very good Durga Puja. He organized it last year. This year it was even more wonderful. And it was an honor for me to go there and seek the blessings of Goddess. This is his poem which he has written. This poem actually summarizes his whole, I would say, his career, his philosophy. Besides everything what he has done, I think he is a very good physician who cares a lot about his patients. And this poem, he gave it to us, gave us for the Teachers' Day celebration. And I think this is an instrument which all his residents should follow about to care for their patients. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Debashish Chaudhary, and let's give a big hand for him, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish. President, sir, Dr. Debashish, the stage is yours.
Slide. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, my teachers, friends, and colleagues. Chairperson, sir, madam, you all say that we stand on the shoulders of the giants. Following the legacy of the past iron presidents who have delivered magnificent orations, I will try to do justice to this task. And it's a matter of great honor and privilege for me to present to you my presidential oration for the IronCon 2024. Now, my presentation shall consist of 3 parts. The first part will consist of acknowledgements and gratitude. The second, a small message to all my students and young colleagues. The third, the oration proper. So this is a 3-step presentation. First, the gratitude and acknowledgements. So obviously, you are nobody until and unless you are tutored well, you have a solid background, you have a solid foundation, and that is provided by your alma mater. So as Dr. Ashish has said, I have been in MAMC for last 43 years. So many people say that I am a living fossil. But I think that has been instrumental in shaping me and shaping my ideas, shaping the values that I imbibe from my teachers and other colleagues working in MAMC. Of course, out of that, 29 years have been spent at GB Pant Hospital and now JIPMER. Now, this is a very, very unique institution because this is only a super specialty hospital, cardiology, neurology, and gastroenterology, and the respective surgical departments, along with psychiatry. We are privileged that we can give the treatments to the patients, evaluate them, investigate them, mostly free of cost. So I had a great opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do. And also, I will say that GB Pant, for example, at the moment we are having 116 beds. So we could keep patients for a longer time. So I could get a longitudinal perspective of the neurological patients, which is not possible in many institutes because of the paucity of beds and the rollover that is needed. My teachers at GB Pant provided the basic foundation. When I joined the department as an assistant professor, in fact, I joined after about 15 or 16 years, and these 5 stalwarts in Indian neurology were there. Professor Meena Gupta built up the Department of Neurology. She nurtured it. She nurtured all of us. And she is my mentor, guide, and philosopher. Madam, I respectfully bow to you. Professor Vinod Puri taught me electrophysiology. Professor Mendiratta taught me clinical medicine, how to be particularly good with time management, and how to do networking. Dr. Geeta Khwaja was very, very scrupulous about history taking. She would put us to the acid test of how to take the history. And that would go out for hours during the rounds. And Professor Ravi Nehru, he was an intellectual and he taught us something which is beyond neurology. Many of the concepts of cognitive neurology, neuropsychology that I know today is because of Professor Ravi Nehru. So these 5 pillars, they shaped me, and I bow to them with gratitude and thanks from the core of my heart. Then, although these giants, they have not taught me directly, but I have interacted with them on numerous occasions. And I have been blessed by their affection, love. Professor Singhal actually inaugurated the film, The Two Sisters, which got an award in ILE in a Mumbai premiere show. And he was so gentle and affectionate. And even now when he meets, he talks about that film. Professor Devika Nag was my examiner. And since then, he has been actually blessing me on numerous occasions. Professor Katrak, I have been communicating with him now and then. He's such an astute clinician, and his command over the diction, over the language is so profound. I learned so many things from him. Professor Prabhakar, I think that I recently visited his institute for an inspection at Mohali, and he has remained the same. He's always affable. He's always, you can approach him with any problem and he's going to respond. Professor Ambar Chakravarti actually was instrumental in augmenting my interest in headache medicine, and he is a prolific writer and he's a thinker. He can think out of the box. So I think, and he has got a huge art collection at his residence. I had the privilege of visiting his house and seeing those artifacts. It was a great honor. And the most gentleman neurologist in our fraternity, I would say, is Dr. Khadilkar. Dr. Khadilkar speaks softly, but he puts down his point firmly. And it's a lesson, actually, to interact with him. And I learned a lot from Dr. Khadilkar, how to deal with people, how to deal with patients. In the headache medicine, I was again fortunate to have the affection of Dr. Peter Goatsby, who is, as you know that he is a world-renowned figure in headache medicine. Dr. Tim Steiner, he is again a very one, and he has done the largest epidemiological studies in headache medicine throughout the world. Dr. Alan Rappaport, a very good friend of India, he has visited India and he is very, very affectionate towards Indian neurologists. Dr. Manjeet Matharu, who is now heading the Queen Square headache unit. Dr. Ravi Shankar, he has been, the beacon for headache medicine for me, and I really value his association all these years. And we work together in the headache subsection. And of course, Alok, you have heard, he's from my alma mater and is a good friend, and always we talk to each other about a lot of issues regarding headache medicine. Now comes the family. Now these are my parents, and you can see us as kids. My father was a self-made man, and my mother was a teacher. My father was very, very youthful and, very handsome, and he had a lot of social connect. I got the, knack of connecting with people through him. And my mother, she was a diligent, hard worker, very pious. Even today, at the age of 83, she doesn't take anything in the morning unless she does the puja. So I've been blessed with these parents who have given me the values to stand upon, and with their love and affection throughout my life. I have my twin sister, and this is the old picture and this is a new picture. And as you know, the twins bond, we know instantly what is happening in others' mind. And she has been a pillar of strength always for any activities, for anything in life that we have done. I have two sons. They have been groomed well, and I think they are doing well in life. And I hope that they will serve to the cause of humanity. That is the lesson I taught them, and I think they will be up to that task. But most importantly, this person, my wife. I have learned the meaning of the word simplicity and humility after my marriage. Madam, thank you very much for teaching me that, and I really acknowledge this. And I know that it is very easy to say to be simple, but actually it is very difficult to remain simple. But she is the example of simplicity and humility. Thank you, madam, for coming into my life and doing all the good that is possible. Thank you very much. Now, the second part is that a lot of my students said, sir, at least give some message to us during your oration. So I said, okay, what kind of message? I've been teaching you, I've been talking to you all the time. What kind of message I want to give? So this is one message I'm going to give to you, because this has been the message to me. I have been following it throughout the last 30 years of my life. Now this is from Shakespeare, Hamlet. Now in the Act 4, Hamlet, as you know, was a prince of Denmark, and his father was wrongly killed by his brother. And he comes back, he was not there at that time in Denmark, he comes back and finds his father was slaughtered. And the mother has married the uncle. So he is totally disoriented. He's thinking that there is so much of foul play going on in the kingdom of Denmark. So he visits his mother and asks some tough questions. And the mother says in one of the dialogues, "Oh, Hamlet, you have broken my heart into two." And Hamlet replies, "Oh, then throw away the worst part and leave with a purer life with the other half." So this is the message. We all have these two halves with us, the bad half and the good half. And there is a continuous tussle. So consciously leave away the bad part and work with the good one. If you do that, you'll be happy and contented. Now, the oration. Now, the title I chose is Migraine, a Ghost Story, and I. The migraine evolved with me, and as you will see in my presentation, that how it changed my understanding and my life. Now, when I started the headache studies, I saw this picture. This is actually in the Metropolitan Museum of Art kept, and this is done by a British caricaturist known as Cruikshank. And you can see this person, and he's having headache. It's titled as The Headache. And you could see that he is having hammered by some demons, some ghosts, right, on his head. So I thought that, what is this? I couldn't make much about this. And he is the painter, George Cruikshank. So I left it at that. But in 2001, one patient came. She was a 26-year-old female, and she had migraine since 18 years. It was recurrent and severe, highly disabling, unpredictable attacks preceded a day before by tiredness, frequent warning, and even nausea, vomiting, intense photophobia, phonophobia, prostration, and can't work properly for days after the attack. And then, after giving this history, she said, "I am no longer the same person. I have no control over me. As if I am possessed. Somebody else has taken control of me." And I then remembered this photograph. What is happening to this patient? And then an intense urge, like many of you might be having, of thinking, who is the closest psychiatric friend, psychiatry consultant, whom should I refer this patient to? Now, then as the time progressed, I got interested in migraine, and then there is this migraine art collection that was done in 80s. And there I chanced upon this picture drawn by a migraine sufferer. Now you can see the patient is vomiting. There are a lot of foodstuff in and around that patient. There is a photophobia. The bulb is shown at the bottom. But at the rear side, you can see a black shadow. What is this black shadow? Now people have started interpreting it in various ways. Is it a demon? Is it something of a projection outside the body? And in fact, there is a paper, the out-of-body experience and related phenomena in migraine art, which describes the phenomenon of autoscopy, the ghosts, and the demons in migraine patients' experiences. My patient, though, had all the symptoms complex of migraine, but it took a lot of time to come to that stage. And Dr. Bloch in UK, actually in his classic paper, actually segregated migraine into a prodromal state and a headache phase. Followed by another paper, and we now know this diagram very well, which was published in Lancet in 1992, where we have the premonitory symptoms, we have the aura, then the headache phase, and then the prodrome. I had a chance of meeting Dr. Blow during my visit to Trinity College during a headache meeting, and he actually, Dr. Ravi Shankar has also been with him for some time during his earlier career. And this is the Trinity College, and I just showing the picture because on the far left top corner, that room you see, Sir Isaac Newton used to live in that room. So that Trinity College is very, very interesting, and all of you who haven't visited it must visit that. Now, but it took about 3,500 years to reach this. Now, if you see the Ebers Papyrus, which is the earliest Egyptian literature, they also have the definitions of skull, the regions of skull in motifs, in sign languages, and they describe the headache. And in fact, the headache was described in a sense that it was present in about 1.2% of the available papyrus papers. About 900 of them are surviving. When you come to India, we were far ahead than the Greeks. In fact, the Sushruta actually defines Ardhavava Vedaka within the Shirorogas, and which is actually considered to be migraine. And so we knew about migraine, and some of the treatments also were offered. I have not gone into that because that is outside the realm of modern medicine. Of course, then came the Greeks, Hippocrates, Aetus, and the prince of neurology, Galen. Now, what they did offer? Willow bark as a treatment, blister therapy, and electric torpedo fish on the head to treat intractable migraines. So these are the electric fish. And see the irony of it. Now we have got the entire spectrum of neuromodulation devices based on those earlier studies of electrical stimulation, neuromodulation of the brain for treating intractable headaches. And these tick marks are FDA approved. But what is the name? You know, hemicrania, migrainea, then came the old French migraine, and then the megrim. And across the continents, you see that some people call it migraine and some people call it migraine. Even the surgical interventions were also prevalent. This is a photograph from 1593, and you can see the elevator kind of an instrument that has been used to do the craniotomy and relieve the patients of migraine. Then came Thomas Willis, 1621 to 1625, and he said that blister therapy and bloodletting and herbal remedies are the treatments for migraine. Now, blister therapy, you actually squash the Spanish fly and make a concoction and you inject. It acts as possibly a counter irritant. That was highly prevalent in England and Europe at that time. And the bloodletting, though you may be surprised that it is still being practiced in many of these East Asian countries and also in India. I have got one patient I'll show, and then there is a systematic review and meta-analysis of bloodletting therapy for primary headaches. And this person, this is a technique called cupping for the treatment of headache. So all this is done because we didn't have any treatments, any proper treatment, right? Then the William Heberden of Heberden Notes, famous. So he actually advocated bitter pills. So the patients were very, very reluctant to take these pills. The father of Darwin, Erasmus Darwin, actually suggested that you should do a centrifugation of the migraine patient to take the blood out from his head into the periphery. So strange treatments and strange times. There has been a debate about where does the migraine originate, whether it is peripheral or central. And this has been going on, and these two prominent neurologists at that time actually fought over this for quite a lot. And then came the Hewling Jackson and William Gower. You have all heard about it or read about it, the borderlands of epilepsy, where he actually distinguishes migraine and epilepsy. And then he also is actually advocating a mixture which has been in vogue in UK and Europe till 1940s. So this is called Gauer's mixture, right? So this was available. And the combination treatment in US was actually done by Arnold Friedman, which is a combination of aspirin, caffeine, and butalbital. The first serendipitous discovery of the treatment came from Edward Wookes, and because that some of the patients who were given ergots were migrainous and they got relief from their pain. So the ergotamine came into the being. Now, story of aura, as you know that Hubert Airy and his father and son duo, they described in great detail about their auras. Of course, later on, scientifically it was done by Carl Lashley. But recently, Dr. Gagandeep and I, with a little contribution, have written this paper on where does the visual aura belong, to epilepsy or migraine. And it's an interesting paper. You should go through it and you will get a lot of idea. Of course, now we know that there is a CSD, a wave of depolarization, a high amount of efflux of potassium, which results in rats, in the cats, and also through functional neuroimaging by Hajikani et al. You could see the progression of the aura from the occipital area up to the frontal area. And you see, importantly, that you see a small red pick there with the time. And that is the time when there is, before the oligemia happens, there is a phase of hyperemia. And that is possibly responsible for the fortification spectra that we see. Does the aura initiate an attack? Not always. And now there are increasing reports that headache is reported in up to 40% of patients during aura phase. So this debunks the idea that primarily migraine is originating from aura, because people used to say that even people without migraine aura have a latent or subclinical CSD, but that is probably no longer true. And recently, in this paper, Vienna, I met him during the MTIS, has produced this kind of iconography of the aura, and it is useful to keep it in hand while talking to the patients and explaining to them what does the aura look like. The greater part of 40s to 70s was actually influenced by this man called Harold Wolff. And he had proposed a simplified paradigm. He did a lot of experiments. He said that there is a vessel constriction, reduced blood flow that leads to aura. There is a vessel dilatation, distended blood vessels that leads to pain. A very simple hypothesis. And that was in vogue. And therefore, migraine for a long time has been labeled as a vascular headache. There was no consensus of terminologies for migraine, even with this 3,000 years of history. Nobody knew that when we are talking about migraine, what we mean by that, right? What are the classification, what is the definition of migraine? The diagnostic criteria came as late as in 1969, and then first ICSD criteria came in 1988, and now we have got the ICSD-3 from 2018. And the new one is going to come in 2026 probably. No classification is perfect, and we need to modify, remodify, and make it more stronger. So what does this classification do? It actually groups them into 4 groups: migraine, tension type headache, trigeminal autonomic cephalalgias, and other primary headaches. And then they give codes, right? And then you can increase the code. So it's hierarchical, right? So depending on your need, you can use the classification. You can just stop at migraine, or you can go to the subcategories if you are interested in headache medicine. But what is more important, that people have recognized that migraine is not just headache. It's a symptom complex. It's a syndrome. The pre-headache, there is a headache phase which develops over a period of time, and a lot of other symptoms that are associated. And even if the headache is gone, you are not normal. So this is the understanding that has developed over a period of last 20 to 30 years. This has been a very important paper by Michael Moskowitz, who was an American, basic researchers. He created the model for the release of neuropeptides because of the inflammation of dural vessels. And that is known as Moskowitz model. And at the same time, Jess Olesen from the Danish Headache Center did multiple studies using the SPECT, the xenon SPECT, and found out what are the blood flow changes in the brain during induced or spontaneous migraine. So this is the model that we see and discuss every time when we go to the headache meetings, is basically given by this person. And then a young man called Peter Goatsby from Sydney, he flew to the Denmark to Edwardson unit, and then they together actually looked at the CGRP in a great detail. At that time, there was no antibodies that was developed to CGRP, so they developed the system, they developed entire thing, and over 20 years period, this particular neuropeptide was tested, retested in multiple animal models and human models, and then because of that, these 4 people got the brain prize in 2021. Moskowitz, Lars Edwinson, Peter Goatsby, and Jess Olison. So it has been a culmination of about half a century of work to understand how does the migraine pain behave, what is its origin. This is a very, very influential paper, again by Jess Olison group, which suggested and clearly showed that migraine is not a vascular. It is not happening in the vessels, right, to start with. Breast vascular thing is possibly an epiphenomenon. So you have got, so this is an instrumental paper. And then this paper came by Peter Goatsby's group, and this is Farooq, he's from India, I just met. He's a very intelligent person, now working in Cleveland Clinic in London. So they wrote this paper, and they showed that actually during the premonitory phase, you have a hypothalamic activation before the headache, 24 to 48 hours before the headache starts. So you could actually get a marker for the start of the migraine. So that was very, very instrumental. So can we predict that the migraine attacks by premonitory symptoms? Answer is yes. Because there has been a study by Griffin et al. Which used the electronic diary, and then they said that, majority of the patients could actually identify their migraines because of the typicality of the premonitory symptoms, if they are aware of it, right? And so now what is happening is that this is the latest study which is published a few months ago, that people have started using the GPANs, the Ubrogepant, for example, in the premonitory phase. So before the headache begins, actually, if you can identify the premonitory phase, patients can identify that, and they can take the drug, and the headache effect will be much less, or they will be completely gone. And so these are the studies, and so this is basically a game changer. So if you are afraid that you are going to get a migraine, and most of the people know that, it's coming, So it is a game changer. Then a lot of work has been done that what is the sensitization that is happening at the peripheral level, at the trigeminal ganglion level, and at the central level, at the thalamic level, and suprathalamic level. And Rami Burstein from Harvard actually has worked a lot on this, and they could show that the throbbing actually what the patients complain about is basically because of the peripheral sensitization. And the other extra sensory perceptions that also patient complain is because of the central sensitization. And therefore, what we need to understand is, in the complex neurobiology of migraine, is that it is not a single process that is important. It is a multitude of processes that are happening with lots of transmitters, 18 nuclei in hypothalamus that are involved, a lot of nuclei and the neuropeptides in the brainstem. And there is a cyclical state of the brainstem that gives the information to the brain whether to take on this message up or down, whether the circuit is open or closed. And therefore, with the same trigger, sometimes you have the migraine and sometimes you do not have the migraine. And this is in a paper by Arne Mai, and that is also shown that actually the hypothalamic activation is the key and the initial state of migraine. Based on all this data, David Doddy gave this picture, and this is one of the classical papers, the phase-by-phase review of migraine pathophysiology, and about it. Now, I will tell a personal story. On 15th August 2006, I had my first severe migraine attack. I remember the date. Why? Because I was on red alert duty in my hospital because of 15th August, and I was coming back after the red alert duty was called off. On road, I had a severe migraine. I had to stop my car. I went to the pavement and I vomited. And then somehow I reached home, but for 2 days I was knocked off. My sister used to have migraine from an early age, and I used to laugh about it. Now I knew, after the age of 40, I started having migraine. Right? So there are lots of non-headache symptoms in migraine. Some of you are well known, but some are less known. And one important thing which has come is the mental slowing, cognitive problems. So I did a conversation with on migraine research with Rami Burstein, who is currently the president of International Headache Society. And I asked him that how much do you know about the pathophysiology of migraine? He said 5% maybe, right? Because we don't know and cannot account for all these non-headache symptoms. And we need to know about that. The cognition of migraine since then has caught my attention, and we did a study in which we found that the interictal, even between the attacks, there are dysfunctions of attention, vigilance, and executive function in migraine patients. And they improve when you actually treat them well. And followed by this, we had another study, and this was published, presented at International Headache Society meeting, that we actually did a randomization between the two groups and assessed them ictally and interictally by doing that randomization. And we found that the episodic migraine with aura patients are having more subjective complaints during the ictal state compared to the interic state. And also that compared to the healthy controls, they are having more. And an active control was the tension type headache patients. Tension type headache patients did not have this cognitive dysfunction at all. So there's something happening to the migraine patient's brain, and this is an important thing to ponder, and I think a lot of research is going on in this. Now, during COVID times, all we were homebound mostly. We used to go to the hospital, come back, and we tried to know that what is the impact of migraine in India. So we did an internet-based survey on that, and we found that the migraine tremendously increased, just like my case. And then we wrote that how to manage migraine in COVID times. But also, during that time, because of the continuous use of the laptops and the other digital media, I developed severe dry eye conditions. So I persuaded my wife that, okay, why don't you do some study in which you see the dry eye from ophthalmology perspective and I see the migraine perspective. So this study showed that, yes, the dry eye patients and the migraine patients have vice versa relationship, bidirectional relationship, and actually that might be a peripheral trigger for recurrent migraine attacks which I was having. Now about the treatment, yesterday we had 2 meetings on treatment. I'll not go into the detail, but the last 3 decades have changed the landscape of this. From the serendipity, we have a step care, then we have a stratified care, and now we have a personalized care. We had ergots, we had NSAIDs, triptans, and now we have GPANs and dietins. So we can choose which drug to give to which patient. So this is a great thing in migraine research. I want to show this person. Many of you might not know him. He is Dr. Pramod Saxena. He's from KGMU. He's a pharmacologist, but he did migraine research on serotonin receptors. And he discovered this atypical serotonin receptors, which was later named as 5-HT1B. And because of this pioneering work by Saxena, it was Patrick Humphrey who discovered the triptans, which was a major therapeutic breakthrough. Now, about the MAPs and GPANs, as I said that these 4 drugs that have come. Now, although the pharma people are pushing it hard, but what is the great thing about this? The great thing is that all these studies are multicentric. They involve large number of people. They're very rigorous. Their statistics, their patient enrollment, the way they segregated the patients is very rigorous. And therefore, the findings need to be taken seriously. Now you see that overall, it is a 50% reduction rate that we consider as an important in migraine. That is, for the test drug is about 43 to 62%, and for the other drugs, it's about, for the placebo, it's about 30%. So you see that even with the MAPs, you have 30 to 35% patients who do not respond to MAPs. So therefore, other mechanisms must be operating, and now people are looking at PACAP, which of course I'll not go into that because it's a very new kind of a thing. Also, we are uncertain about the usage of these MAPs. There are a lot of questions. How long will you give? Who will call as a treatment failure? Can you switch from one MAP to another? If you switch, then what will be the duration of that switch? And then if there is a medication overuse headache, what do you do? So all these questions, this has been actually dealt with in the recent book that has been published, and you can go and read about it. These are very important questions, and there is some ambiguity, uncertainty about this. Now, are maps good for Indians? Yes, we did the Empower study, including Latin America, Middle East, and Asia, and we found that actually Map performs equally well as in the West. So Indians do respond to maps. Does the efficacy persist? Again, the answer is yes. We did the galcanezumab trial in China and India, and we found that the effect actually persisted even in the open label phase. So these drugs are helpful, they do work, and once available, they will be a shot in the arm for all of us. Now, what is the magnitude of the problem? The magnitude of migraine, as you know, is very huge. About more than 1 billion affected in the world. Second most disabling disorder. Huge economic burden. After stroke and Alzheimer's, probably it is the third neurological disorder with the highest economic burden. And so we need to know the migraine epidemiology in India. Some time back, Girish from NIMANS did this study in which he found that it was 25.2% 1 year prevalence rate. Internationally, it is about 14.7%. So Indians are having higher migraines. We did the same study in the National Capital Region using the same paradigms under the global burden of headache disorders umbrella, and we found that again it's 26.3%. So therefore, you can say that 1 in 4 adults in India is having migraine. And if you see the chronic migraine, it is about 25 million, a huge number. So we must be concerned as a neurologist. The main problem in the migraine field, though, is the chronic migraine. These patients are very difficult to treat, and you must salute this man, he was no more, Nine Matthew, who actually gave the term transform.
Welcome everyone for the Baldev Singh Oration. The speaker for this oration is Dr. Hannah Monyer from Germany, and her topic is how do inhibitory neurons control neuronal network and at long distance, implications in health and disease. And to introduce the speaker, we have Dr. Suboor Bakth. Can we have Dr. Suboor, please?
Chairperson, Dr. Devika Nag, Dr. Satish, Khadilkar, and Dr. Surya. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to introduce Professor Monyer, whom I know for several years. And I thank the organizers of IronCon, especially Dr. Chaudhary, for inviting us over and giving us the opportunity. To start with, Hannah Monyer was born in Romania and went to Germany at the age of 17. She finished high school in Heidelberg and studied medicine at the University of Heidelberg. After 5 years of training in child psychiatry and pediatric neurology in Mannheim and Lübeck, she went to Stanford in USA as a postdoc fellow with Dennis Choi. Subsequently, she did a second postdoc with Peter Seeberg at the University of Heidelberg, where she was a junior group leader. Since 1999, she is the head of Department of Clinical Neurobiology at the Medical Faculty of Heidelberg. And since 2009, she's also a professor at the German Cancer Research Center, DKFZ, of the Helmholtz Association. In her research on synaptic plasticity, learning and molecular biology, electrophysiology, optogenetics, and behavioral approaches, she is known for her achievements. She has obtained numerous prizes, including the most prestigious German award for scientists, the Leibniz Prize, which is the German equivalent of the Nobel Prize, and the Guy Lussac Humboldt Prize, the Sung Ming Tusu Prize of the Ministry of Science and Technology, Taiwan, the prize of the Berlin Brandenburger Academy of Sciences, and the Lautenschläger Research Prize. She's a member of the Heidelberg Academy of Sciences, of EMBO, the German National Academy of Sciences Leopoldina, and of the Academia Europaea. She obtained 2 times the most prestigious European grant, the ERC Advanced Grant, that is funded with 2.5 million euros. And I must say, hers was one of the first labs in the world to introduce projection neurons. Indeed, she is a highly cited scientist and counted among top in the world in a field of excellence. No doubt, she appears frequently in media discourses such as newspapers, radio, and TV channels. Professor Monyer nurtures internationalization that is visible in form of diversity in her lab. In addition to her scientific excellence, Professor Monyer feels responsible for the society and actively takes part in various social initiatives such as supporting school and college students, introducing them to neuroscience, giving them the opportunity to visit her lab, nurturing their talent, and disseminating information to society at large. Hannah Monyer speaks 6 languages. She's an excellent pianist and a cello player and can be seen performing professionally. She's an avid traveler and very sportive, and some of her expeditions were to the Alps in 2022, to Mount Kilimanjaro in 2023, and to Patagonia in 2024. She is indeed a very kind and friendly person and takes personal interest in developing her team members and those associated with her. Last but not the least, she is a friend of India. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Monyer on stage.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bakth. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Chaudhary, for inviting me to speak here at your, most important and yearly annual neurology meeting. As Dr. Bakth said, it's a privilege for me to be here in India for several reasons, not only to tell you something about our research, but also that I learn from you, learn more about your culture, learn about the diversity, but in particular to also learn what we have in common. And what we have in common suddenly is this thirst for more knowledge. You as a clinician and me, of course, as a basic scientist. As Dr. Bakth said, my background has been clinical, and it is due to 2 great teachers that in the end, I did my postdoc in Stanford, that I went into basic research. So I do think it is very, very important whom we meet in life, in whose lab, in whose hospital we work, and where we are being trained, because these leading figures, they have a great influence on us. Now, I will delve directly into what we do in the lab, why we do it, what we know about inhibition in the brain, and why I and my colleagues think that this knowledge does have translational potential. I now just need to figure out where the pointer is. I see it here so that I can point. Yes, exactly. So about inhibition in the brain, first of all, I want to say that we work in the lab on learning and memory and how inhibitory neurons, what they do and why they are important in the hippocampus, the structure that is important for learning and memory. However, the principles that I will show you in the hippocampus, they hold true for many other brain areas as well. And this slide is just to remind me to tell you that how our memory functions. And when I say memory, I mean episodic memory. If you remember tomorrow that you have been here, if you remember the talks, it is episodic memory. It is what happens where and when. And for that, the hippocampus is of utmost importance. We come back to that. We read in Cicero's, in philosophical works of the great orators of antiquity, that people tried to enhance their memory by particular techniques, and I will show you one of them. But they understood already that memory is that it's very helpful for memory if you think and if you put what you try to remember in a particular place. What do I mean by that? So we read in these antique texts that if you try to remember something by heart, it is good to fragment that and put it on locations that are well known to you. So I will give you some examples. So this complex text is put on the digits of your hands. And you try to remember not only the text, but also to remember where you put it, to associate something that you want to remember with a particular location. And this association helps you later when you try to remember it to bring this back. Music can be remembered that way. This is a prayer. This is an incunable that I found in Karlsruhe from 1500. So this is a very long prayer that you say, and you put the different parts of the prayer. Now I'm lost the laser point. Again, on the digits of your hands. You can put it in a house, you can put it in a library, but it has to be known as a well-known space, and then you go back and retrieve it after having associated with that. These are examples from different literature over the centuries, but one of the best known is for the Europeans, Botticelli's representation of Dante's Inferno. So here the Inferno is represented as sinners. The greater their sin is, the deeper in the Inferno they are, and down here is the devil. So Dante traveled this Inferno in the literature, and he remembers the different sinners by associating them with the location where in the Inferno they had been. Now we go to what we do in the lab to try to understand how memory works and how inhibition actually works. So I was trained as a clinician, but in Peter Diebert's lab, I turned to molecules, I turned to single channels. We try to figure out why particular cells have different channels. We see how these cells are embedded in a small network. We used also network modeling. This was a collaboration with Roger Traub for many years to actually then knock out these channels to try in behaving animals to see the contribution for learning and memory. So we go from the molecular to the cellular to the network level, all the way to the